Siblings Amy and Scott Fandel have been missing from Sterling, Alaska since 1978. It's been over 40 years since anyone has seen either one of them. Scott Curtis Fandel was born on January 23, 1965. Not much is known about his biological father, but his mother, Margaret, married a man named Roger Fandel when Scott was very young. On August 25, 1970, Margaret and Roger welcomed their daughter, Amy Lee Fandel. By January of 1978, Roger left the family and moved to Arizona. Reportedly, Margaret invited her sister Kathy Schoenfelder to move in with her, her 13-year-old son Scott, and 8-year-old daughter Amy, and live with them in their cabin in Sterling. On September 4, 1978, Margaret went to visit her sister Kathy, who was working at Good Time Charlie's in Sterling. Around 10 that night, Margaret and Kathy walked the children home and returned to the bar. After getting home, Scott and Amy went to visit their neighbors, the Luptons, who had children around their age who they often played with. Another neighbor claims they saw lights on in the Fandel cabin around 11:45 p.m. Margaret and Kathy arrived home between 2 and 3 a.m. Despite there being a pot of boiling water on the stove along with a box of macaroni and all the lights being off, even though Scott and Amy both had a fear of the dark, the women didn't think a lot of it, assuming the kids had just gotten tired and went to bed, or were spending the night at the Luptons. So they went to bed themselves without checking on the children. The following morning, Margaret left for work around 8:30. When Kathy woke up around noon, she wasn't too alarmed when she didn't see the kids, assuming they were already at school. At some point that day, Margaret tried calling the school, looking for Amy, but was told neither Amy nor Scott ever showed up. She was worried, but her boss wouldn't let her leave early. After school, the Lupton children came by the Fandel cabin, asking if Scott and Amy could come out and play. When Kathy learned her niece and nephew never showed up for school, she called Margaret, and then she called the police. Roger Fandel was considered a suspect at one point, but he was never charged. Another reported incident involves Kathy Nichols, who was Roger's live-in girlfriend at the time of the disappearances. Years later, Kathy Nichols allegedly told Roger's uncle that she would tell him what happened to Scott and Amy in exchange for $5,000. But nothing ever became of that. Terry Schoenfelder is highly suspicious of his former brother-in-law, Roger Fandel. Terry recalls an incident not too long after Scott and Amy went missing where Roger confronted Margaret with a gun and said that they were after him, not her. Terry's not sure who "they" is referring to. Police were unable to lay out exactly what happened to the Fandel children that night from the evidence at the scene. The theories of what could have happened that night have captivated internet detectives. Were the kids abducted by a stranger who overheard that they were going to be left alone at the cabin that night? What about the children's father? It was said he had a very turbulent marriage to Margaret. Could he have been behind their disappearance? Other theories suggest that a friend of Margaret's might have kidnapped the children and possibly killed them. Authorities were alerted at 5:15 p.m., about 15 hours after Scott and Amy disappeared. There were no signs of forced entry and nothing was missing. Bullet casings were found outside near the cabin. However, it's unknown if they were related to the children's disappearance. Volunteers and search and rescue dogs combed through the area and nearby Scout Lake was dragged. As soon as Roger heard the news, he flew to Alaska to assist with the search. No one believed that Scott and Amy would have left voluntarily. Scott had passed a wilderness survival course and would know better than to go into the woods without appropriate gear. Margaret believes her children are still alive. Shortly after the incident, she moved back to Illinois and remarried. Roger also had another daughter. The cabin has since burned down. 42 years later, the disappearance of Scott and Amy Fandel remains unsolved and shrouded in mystery. If you have any information that can crack this case, please contact Alaska State Troopers Major Crime Division at 907-262-4453.